tonight we've got two excellent guests for you to have a listen to. I'm not going to waffle on any longer than necessary. We've got Dr. Judy Wood and Andrew Johnson tonight to talk about the 9/11 event and everything that goes with that, hopefully. You're free to call in or text on the northeasttruth.ning chat line. If you've got any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to just get in touch and we'll pass the questions on if we can get through them all. So without any more messing about, I'd like to introduce Dr. Judy Wood and Andrew Johnson. Are you there?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi there.
Excellent. Well, let's get straight on with it, and shall we? Would you like to give us a broad overview of who you are and what the topic we're going to be talking about tonight covers? It's about as expansive as I can make it. The floor's yours.
Who's on? Me?
You go first, Judy.
Okay. Dr. Judy Wood. I've got my bachelor's degree in civil engineering, structural engineering, and my master's degree in engineering mechanics, which is like applied physics, and a PhD in materials engineering science, an interdisciplinary course, and mine was mainly in engineering mechanics, materials characterization, Mori interferometry, that area,
right.
Experimental mechanics.
Excellent. Sounds very technical. And yourself, Andrew?
Yeah, I've got sort of varied background. I did a degree in computer science, finished that in 1986. Then I got involved with doing software development, what's called real-time software for telecommunications, robot control, factory robot control, that is. And then ended up getting into education, and currently I work part-time for the Open University, tutoring some students, assessing other students for disabilities, and just to talk about the topic a little bit, the reason why we're both on together is we ended up crossing paths in the field of 9/11 research, and Dr. Judy has done a huge amount of original research, probably more original research into the events of 9/11, primarily but not exclusively at the World Trade Center. And I'd sort of done a little bit of research into that, but nothing really original on the scale that she had. And we essentially came into contact through this mutually shared interest. I suppose it will have been late 2006, I think, probably for the first time, and that was how we came onto this situation here, speaking with you tonight.
Excellent. Right. Well, that's your credentials well and truly established, and very impressive they are. For the listeners who aren't entirely familiar with the actual thread that we're going to be dealing with tonight, there's the entire 9/11 truth movement en masse, and within that there's various different strands, hypotheses, theories, you name it. You can probably find every possible explanation for 9/11 that you can imagine out there. The two main ones, if you discredit, which I'm pretty sure we all do, discredit the official version of events, the only real other two issues at hand, I think, are the actual means of how the 9/11 was accomplished. And that's really where both of you come into this, I think. Would I be right in saying that essentially we have a difference of opinion within the 9/11 truth movement about the actual means that we use to bring the towers down and the implications that has on the wider world? Is that something like right?
Well, I don't consider myself as part of the truth movement.
No,
that's a strange entity in itself, and it's kind of like a religion of thermite, and I don't know how they get that to work. It's a welding material, But I'm just a scientist, and I have researched what I have come up with myself, and it's sort of independent of what anyone else has been doing.
Right. Well, that pretty much sums it up. That it's the thermite issue against directed energy weapons is the crux of that particular discourse, is it not? Yeah.
I think it's more of a false choice between the official story or the official alternative story.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
And you're not supposed to talk about anything else.
Yeah. Heresy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is really sort of this area is how Dr. Judy and I first came into contact, because I'd become sceptical of the official story in about 2004. And I think, Dr. Judy might explain later on, depending on how the conversation goes, how she became sceptical. Like the moment she saw it on the TV, she knew right away that something was seriously wrong, and and I didn't, basically. And it was in 2004 that I started to look at these videos, that had been put out, and then I concluded at that point, it's got to be some type of explosives in the building then, because we can't just have these buildings burning down. And I sort of sailed along that path for probably a couple of years without going into the level of detail that really was required, I should say, to actually find out what happened. In other words, what happened at the World Trade Center is, in some ways, it's actually very simple. But when you go into the detail of it, it's much more complicated. And if I may just say that the main thing that happened is that the buildings turned to powder, they turned to dust. And however many bombs you put in the building, conventional bombs, they don't turn the buildings to powder. And I never really stopped to think about this, because going back to the thermite story, that had been put on the table, essentially, as Dr. Judy just said, as a false choice. And I didn't realise it was a false choice because I didn't know about the alternatives. And what I then started to find out is the connections of the people that were putting on the table this thermite story, namely this Dr. Stephen E. Jones character. I found out later that they had a connection to the energy question, in terms of, as we were talking a few minutes ago before we came on air, the cold fusion scenario, and he was involved with that. And of course, cold fusion is an energy phenomenon. And when I found that out, that made me realise how important, what Dr. Judy was doing at the time, because she'd been saying for quite a long time before I discovered this Jones connection. I wasn't the first person to discover it. It was posted on YouTube somewhere. I didn't originally post it or anything. And so she'd been pointing out this idea of using directed energy weapons, and it wasn't just an idea. How I came to it was through the dust, and through the cop car, because of my background in interferometry. Interfering optical beams in my lab, but I know what constructive and destructive interference look like. Right. There's these cars under FDR Drive where the front part was toasted. And what I mean by toasted, it's beyond repair. It's toast. It's history. It's not necessarily from heat, but it looks like it could be. It's just destroyed. Something happened to it, and then the back end looks like it's brand new on the showroom floor, brand new wax job, and there's an abrupt difference between the front and the back, very abrupt, and that you don't get from heat. And on the other side, there's a circular spot, and that's what I started thinking about interferometry, and that started working with all sorts of things, and I started noticing from the dust on up, and everything, it's like finding. Somebody gave me this example recently, and I think it's excellent. So it's like finding a body with a bullet hole in it, and you've never seen a gun before. But based on your forensic study of that body with a bullet hole in it, you know that guns exist.
You might not know what they look like, but you know there's some sort of device that creates that net effect.
That's what I came up with.
And what, eventually realises that what Dr. Judy was doing was different, fundamentally different to what everyone else was doing, in that she was looking at the actual evidence of what was there, and she wasn't drawing any initial conclusions. She was looking at all the possibilities that she could find, and what the evidence was, and what the evidence was telling her. And then I began to realise, and it took me quite a long time, that I hadn't really been doing that. I'd been basically, just looking at what these supposedly knowledgeable people had concluded, and I was taking that on board without really, studying the actual evidence thoroughly enough as to what that was based on. In other words, the fundamental thing here is, if you want to find the truth, you have to look at the evidence. And as I say in one of the presentations I give, if somebody is convicted of a crime, years and years ago, then you at some point some new evidence comes to light, which proves they couldn't have committed that crime. Unfortunately, in this country, we have a right of appeal, and that person can then, that case can be retried. The new evidence can be put in under scrutiny, and the verdict can be changed. And that process, this appeal process and this review of the new evidence, was not being done within the 9/11 truth groups that I was observing. And when you present them with this new evidence that Dr. Judy had uncovered, they just say, "Oh no, that's not right. We're not going to look at that. In fact, you shouldn't be looking at that, because if you do look at the evidence, you're going to just reduce the credibility of the truth movement."
Exactly.
That's essentially what they were saying. And again, it took me a while that I'm thinking, hang on a minute. So this basic process of looking at the evidence, we're not allowed to do that to find the truth then. And that's what the majority of the truth groups were saying. Because, you see, the problem is that when we get deeply into this, and Dr. Judy's talked about some of the energy phenomena that she originally discovered, it's quite a long way off the radar screen, and you've got to move quite a distance to get to the. And people, just want to jump to the answer. They don't want to look at the evidence because it takes too much time and brain power and grey matter usage. They just want to jump to the answer. So the way that the truth movement was working, and again I'd fallen for this, is the answers had been pre-packaged into a nice PowerPoint presentation, and then put onto Google Video, and you just went and watched that, and then you knew what the truth was. And it's not like that. There's much more to it than that. And the only way to find the truth is to keep looking at the evidence. And that process doesn't just apply to 9/11 research. It applies to all these areas of alternative knowledge, that people who come on your program and talk look into. Also you've got to be careful, for example, as Dr. Judy is, with the directed energy weapon term itself. So I don't know if you want to mention your definition of what that is, because we do like to get clear.
Also starting out with, I figured out it had something to do with energy. Obviously it was a weapon, and it's directed. They controlled it somehow, so they got energy to interfere somehow in a specific area. So it was directed energy, and they used it as a weapon. And then I had heard that term since then. I think some people assume the conventional, laser beams and all that, but what else do you call a weapon that involves energy and space interfering? And we need to call it something. And also, folks said, well, energy weapons don't exist. It's only in Buck Rogers movies and, science fiction.
Would you like to give us a broad overview of who you are and what the topic we're going to be talking about tonight covers? It's about as expansive as I can make it. The floor's yours.
Who's on? Me?
You go first, Judy.
Okay. Dr. Judy Wood. I've got my
policeTruth.ning chat line. If you've got any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to just get in touch, and we'll pass the questions on if we can get through them all. So without any more messing about, I'd like to introduce Dr. Judy Wood and Andrew Johnson. Are you there?
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Hi there.
Excellent. Well, let's get straight on with it. And shall we? Tonight we've got two excellent guests for you to have a listen to. I'm not going to waffle on any longer than necessary. We've got Dr. Judy Wood and Andrew Johnson tonight to talk about the 9/11 event and everything that goes with that, hopefully. You're free to call in or text on and off.
Bachelor's degree in civil engineering, structural engineering, and my master's degree in engineering mechanics, which is like applied physics, and a PhD in materials engineering science, an interdisciplinary course, and mine was mainly in engineering mechanics, materials characterization, Mori interferometry, that area,
Right.
experimental mechanics.
Excellent. Sounds very technical. And yourself, Andrew?
Yeah, I've got sort of varied background. I did a degree in computer science, finished that in 1986. Then I got involved with doing software development, what's called real-time software for